Hari Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Swami Jyotirmayananda Society, our journey to self realization. Please subscribe for the mystical meanings and to enjoy daily satsang. We are currently exploring the book Advice to Students, authored by Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. We are discussing the chapter of Don't Fall Prey to Drugs. See drugs abuse for what it really is. Drug induced experiences are unable to broaden one's capacity for facing the realities of life with maturity and wisdom. Rather, these experiences hide within them the seeds of unresolved problems, and by hiding problems, you can never solve them. A user of drugs tends to become an escapist, veiling the voices of his conscience. He is therefore unable to understand the difference between the real and the ideal. If he becomes burdened by a brain and nervous system that have suffered irreversible damage, he is unable to harmonize his life in the plane of day to day reality and to create the proper circumstances for mental and spiritual expansion. A person following a healthy, positive life may lack the effervescent experiences of expansion and ecstasy that he thinks the drug user enjoys, and due to delusion, he may think he is missing something. But this is a great error. The mind weakened by drugs and alcohol is a diseased mind and not at all desirable. Such a mind is an insult to all that is good and sublime in humanity. So, it is very important that we stay away from the impact of drugs or any kind of experimentation with it. Even a little creates that sense and people get addicted. So, avoidance is the best policy in this regard. Moving on to a message to Hindu students living in the West. Because Sanatan Dharma is a very deep culture, it needs to be profoundly understood while we are living in these Western countries. As you mingle with young people in the West and begin to follow their philosophy and their ways, your parents become frightened that you will become irreligious, that you will lose your Indian culture. Growing in the West gives you the possibility of a great deal of bad association through constant exposure to the open culture, TV, constant social apps, etc., and through people around you who are becoming more and more materialistic, and the peer pressure also that mounts. And it is indeed important to reflect upon this question. How can you sustain the profundity of Eastern culture in a Western world that is overpowered by materialism? To help answer this question, religion must be understood from a broader point of view. Religion is not dress, it is not language, it is not external style. It is how you attune yourself with God in whatever setup or situation you are placed in. To be truly religious implies to develop an integrated personality that allows you to unfold the greatness of your potential. Can, can you, as Hindus, young people growing up in the West, blossom into such integrated personalities? That is the question. Blending the best of the East and the West. In Western culture, blind materialism, lack of human values, perversions involving drug abuse and rampant crime, as well as other social ills, are heavily weighted on society. There are good people also, but by and large, the culture itself is very loose in this regard. These unhealthy elements of Western culture must be carefully avoided by you. They don't work for people who are following the deeper culture of Sanatana Dharma. However, the dynamic self effort of the people in the West, their orderliness, The rationality and the scientific way of looking at things must be imbued. So, in any society, in any culture, we should always pick up the good things and discard the things that are not so good or that may be harmful for you. Much of India is burdened by the psychology of tamas or inertia. The people have the most marvelous scriptures, but they do not explore them. They allow themselves to feel sustained by the old glory of their culture without making their culture ever new and vibrant. So, that is one deficiency. Every country has its pluses and minuses. Too many people in India are burdened by a sense of inactivity or inertia in their practical lives as well. The moment such people encounter a little frustration in their businesses, they will begin to quote the Mahabharata, assert that all of life is determined by karmas, declare that money does not bring anything of value in life, and immediately resign themselves to inactivity. In the West, people will not do so. The moment they fail in business, they will go to a supermarket and get a job as a clerk or do something else that will lift them out of their predicament as quickly as possible. In Eastern culture, time does not matter. God is eternal. If a lecture had been set for the early morning, those attending may not arrive until 9 or 10 o'clock or even until evening. In Western culture, there is much more appreciation for the value of time and for punctuality. In the Eastern culture, coordination of people in work that requires intense cooperation is lacking. Contrariwise, Western culture has given us many excellent examples of highly coordinated work. For example, see how spacecrafts are developed and sent on their missions. See how hundreds of people put their minds and all their technical abilities together and coordinate to accomplish dazzling tasks before the eyes of the world. Each of you are now exposed to these tremendous advancements in Western culture and can do your part in continuing such technological creativity and coordination of human energy. Thus, growing up in the West, you have to discard the defects of both the Eastern and Western ways of thinking and assimilate the best of both cultures. Each culture has its great merits. When you understand and cherish Indian philosophy with a scientifically oriented mind, you can present that philosophy in a better light to all of humanity. This predicament of Eastern and Western cultures is just like the story of the lame man and the blind man. Perhaps you may have heard of it. The lame man lived miserably in one home, and the blind man lived miserably in another. But one day they decided to work together. The lame man who lacked useful legs would climb on the shoulder of the blind man who lacked useful eyes. As they walked in this fashion, the lame man used his good eyes to direct the blind man and show him the way. When they came together, each helped the other. When they were apart, they could not help each other, nor were they helpful to themselves either. The material culture of the West in itself is blind, it has no goal, and the Eastern culture in itself is lame, it has no legs. Oriental philosophy must climb on the shoulders of Western culture and show Westerners where their energy and technology should be directed. Without that spiritual direction, the technological advancement of the West may lead to a tremendous calamity. It is already doing so. Young people as well as adults are becoming more and more perverted due to too much exposure to social media, TV, all the sense stimulating objects, etc., and too much comfort and laziness results. Comfort has been identified with happiness, but in reality, it is not so. Too much comfort has actually deprived people of the joy of life and has thrown them into a stream of tension and stress in which they are drowning. People have very little regard for themselves. Now, A student does not depend on his own brain. He will not calculate unless he has a calculator. In the name of ease, people have discarded the sense of their own ability, and they now sit in front of machines with great awe and consider themselves lesser. That feeling has developed in the absence of spiritual culture. If the West continues moving as it is, it will be like a blind man moving headlong into degradation and destruction. If the East remains isolated and enclosed within itself, it fails to share and imbibe the technological knowledge and skills of the West, it will be like that lame man. There will be no progress. Therefore, you young people and your parents living in the West have a unique opportunity to enjoy the best of both cultures and blend them in your lives in a way that brings renewed health to both. So, with this, we conclude our satsang and we will continue this journey in tomorrow's satsanga. Hari Om Tat Sat.